and welcome to the Mama Making Podcast, where we share stories of moms making impact in their own lives and in the world around them. I'm Jessica, and each week I sit down with women who are building businesses, leading communities, shaping culture, and redefining what success looks like inside of motherhood. Because motherhood does not have to stop your ambition. It can transform it. Now let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mama Making Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica. If you're new, welcome. If you're not new, then welcome back. Today, I'm very excited to have Emily Encinosa on the podcast. Emily is a certified professional midwife and a founder of Expecting with Emily and Birds and Bees Maternity, a community-based midwifery and wellness center in Maryland. She provides home birth midwifery care, prenatal education, postpartum support, and advocacy for physiological undisturbed birth. A mom of two and an entrepreneur, Emily is intentionally building what she calls a maternity ecosystem rooted in autonomy, safety, and community. Welcome, Emily. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Jessica. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yes. So tell everyone who you are, where you're from, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Amazing. My name is Emily Encinosa. I am a certified professional midwife and mom of two. I'm actually born and raised in Annapolis, Maryland, and that is where I currently reside. I started my practice in Las Vegas, Nevada. And that is a huge home birth space. And I've attended over 500 births. But for me, I had a vision and mission to come and bring back the care that I learned to give to others in Nevada back to my hometown. And that is what brought me here back to Annapolis, having my second son, but also then opening up and founding the Birds and the Bees Maternity Center. So offering classes and support groups that are paid for and free for families to come and receive support and community for autonomous birth, and understanding that they even have these resources that are available, because we very much, it's very different on the East Coast compared to the West Coast when it comes to birth and what resources are available for natural things.
Yeah, I love that you're bringing the work that you did on the West Coast to the East Coast and back to your hometown. I imagine that's pretty special.
It is. There's a lot of full circle moments. It's definitely different. I miss Nevada. I was in New York City even before I went to Nevada, to Las Vegas, I would say, because I haven't been anywhere else outside of there. But yeah, being in big cities and then coming home to Annapolis, Maryland is different. It's still a little bit of a metropolitan area, but not quite as much. But I realized that also in being here, it's very institutionalized in thinking. And so out of hospital birth and community birth, not only are we not well respected by our peers, but the community itself just thinks that it's really fringe, whereas on the West Coast, just all holistic health is not so fringe. It's really like mainstream. And here it's still kind of coming into the mainstream area.
Yeah, and that's the perfect segue. I would love to talk more about this modern home birth experience or movement, just evolving the way that we're thinking about birth. Obviously, home birth is new to some, but has been happening forever. Hospital birth is live and well and will continue to happen as we need. But I would love to talk more about home birth. What do you think people are getting wrong about home birth? What are some of the misconceptions? And where do we think they come from?
That's a great question. I think that a lot of the misconceptions come just from a lack of knowledge and understanding of physiological birth, right? There was a post going around on social media maybe like a month or so ago in the midwives groups, and it talked about like a doctor that had said they had never attended or like have never seen a normal or like a natural birth or whatever. And it's like, yes, because you're only seeing medicalized birth in a hospital, or it had never gone right or something along the lines of what that post was geared towards. And if you are only ever doing it one way, you are not going to even understand what another looks like, right? So it's first like opening and changing your frame of mind. I'm a hypnobirthing instructor, and so we reframe a lot of the words that we use when we talk about labor and birth and how we're experiencing it. So instead of thinking about it as something that's painful or dangerous, we are thinking about it as something that's intense and transformative, right? So just changing how we reframe and how we view. And a lot of people, I think, bond subconsciously through sharing traumatic stories. You don't often hear the really peaceful, beautiful. You hear like, oh my God, my baby came really fast and I had to call 911 because we had a home birth without preparing for it. Or I had an emergency and thank God I was at the hospital. And really, sometimes that's because you were in the hospital. When we have a lot of statistics nowadays that show that home birth with a trained professional is as safe and has the same outcomes for moms and babies that hospital birth does.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think that as we kind of have this wave of modern home birth coming, I feel like it is coming from the West Coast and kind of trailing across. But in my area, it's definitely something that is more talked about and more in the ether, if you will. What would you say to those who actually, let me back up. I think that there is a lot of misconception about home birth and what that looks like. And I always like to give the caveat of hospitals will always exist. People will always need a hospital birth if medically necessary. But for those who choose to do it a little bit differently, how can people decide if home birth is right for them and who is it for?
That's a really great question. So I screen all my clients and it's for low risk individuals, right? And that is the biggest thing. Thinking about what I just said with like fear, I think that culturally we think about birth being an emergency and a fearful thing, regardless of home birth itself. So people think, how could you do something that is so crazy and extreme, not in a safe space? Because we think that it needs to be contained within a hospital system. So people who are low risk aren't typically having these same sort of medical emergencies that we would sometimes see with someone who has gestational hypertension and not even medical emergencies, but needs for an induction or needs for, more continuous monitoring. Truly, that's what it is. Low risk individuals, what really constitutes their care and their ability to be home for birth, because we screen you during prenatal care, is that you can have intermittent monitoring. Intermittent monitoring is done once every 15 to 30 minutes in active labor. And if there were any reason, if your baby were having decelerations, we were worried about an infection or something like that were giving indication that you really need more continuous monitoring, that would transfer you then and indicate that we would need to go from home to hospital, whether that be prior to your birth starting or during labor itself. But typically people who are low risk don't have that need often. Advanced maternal age is not always a reason just for continuous monitoring. There's not a lot of evidence that supports that either. So, at home, just because I have a mom that's over 36, that doesn't change my guidelines for her. But yes, so we're screening before someone comes into my care. I'm screening them. Each state has different regulations as well. Unfortunately, in the state of Maryland, I cannot take a VBAC. Can't take breech or twins. CNMs can, which is great. But in Nevada, I could take a VBAC, and that holds a really special place in my heart. We also know, in my experience as a doula here, VBACs are not happening. They are not well supported. And so they need to be done out of a hospital with a CPM as much as they need to be done with a CNM. So yeah, so it's low risk things. It's quantified usually by state, but there's other health metrics that we're looking for as well that we go over in a consultation with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've talked about it on the podcast in a couple episodes that I had a planned home birth, labored at home, and then wound up having to transfer. And one of the things that when I was looking for a home birth midwife was transfer rates. And to me, a transfer rate being low was like a really great sign. But now, having been out of it, gone through the whole experience for any subsequent births, I'm looking for midwives who are like, oh no, you got to go. Like, I'm looking for the midwives who are transferring and not afraid to say, we transfer out. I think one of the biggest misconceptions from where I sit is families or moms or whoever assuming that if something went wrong at home, that you wouldn't have a professional there to help in an emergency. And my pushback is
That's
always
super fair.
Yeah, my pushback is always that's because you should have a midwife who is not willing to risk the option of something going wrong. So in the midwives that
Yeah.
who do home birth, it's like the rule of threes. If three things are like kind of off, we're transferring you. Or if in pregnancy
Yeah.
everything's going fine, there's no issues, but the last week there's the rule of three, like three things are a little bit off, we're going to monitor and see what happens, and then before we even get into it, we're transferring you. Or maybe it's like my situation, uncomplicated birth, uncomplicated pregnancy. My labor was just super long. And for whatever reason, I wasn't progressing. I transferred to the hospital, and it wasn't because I was unsafe or in an emergency situation. My
Yeah.
body was tired, and for
Yeah.
whatever reason, my cervix kept closing, and I just needed to rest. And medication helped do that. And then I pushed my baby out. So I think that there's so many misconceptions about like the dangers or emergency level.
Yes.
I think that if you're
Yes.
paying attention to this movement, you can see that that is valid, a valid concern always. But midwives are transferring people to hospitals when it's necessary, before it's necessary.
Well, and for me, like, we're screening, right? So when I went back to that, like, we are screening in prenatal care. That is what gives us an idea and what's established your risk factor. It's interesting, Jessica, that you brought up like the rule of threes, because there actually isn't anything that we have that helps us like gauge risk as midwives. And we don't. We have like set guidelines, right? Our regulations as NARM guidelines. We have our own things and experiences that set us up for like what we're willing to kind of counter as like a green, a yellow, and a red flag that constitutes. But I have been working on something with AI to develop a risk factor screening tool that midwives can use. So not only like using our own judgment, I often consult with my other midwife friends, and that's changed a lot for me from when I was working in a group practice in Nevada to now working as an independent midwife in Maryland. Like, hey, this is happening, this is coming up. What do we think? Or I'm consulting with a higher level of care. But in terms of that, I've been trying to work on a tool that we can use and offer to midwives to help with that, because I think like as a CPM too, and just in general as out of hospital midwives, that continuity of care and being able to hear and know our clients and create safety and trust within you. And for us, you share things, we get to gather information, and that information helps us say, hey, maybe we should do some labs, or maybe we should refer you to MFM for something, or, do some follow up. And it helps us get more information. So then that way we can give good clinical judgment to say like, hey, this is kind of where we're at. But not only that, consult you. I also had 2 home birth transfers. I don't know if you looked on my social media page or not, but I ended up having pre-rom with my first, and I was 37 and 5, 2020. I had attended a ton of births during COVID. Pretty sure I was asymptomatic with COVID when I had him. And my labor was like 3 days long. I could not give antibiotics in Nevada because we don't have regulations for CPMs out there, or CNMs really, for home birth. And so I transferred to the hospital for meds, and nothing was wrong at all. There was never an emergency. So I totally understand that. Even with my second, when we made the decision to go to the hospital, my labor was prolonged. And I know what that looks like as a midwife. Like, I was taking the herbs, I was doing the things, but at some point I knew that rest was going to be really important for me. But also being educated in the decisions and being able to have informed choice conversations that happen, because labor is very dynamic, right? And when a shoulder dystocia happens, or a hemorrhage, those sort of things are all really normal. They don't always constitute a transfer. We are very well trained to handle those things. Even someone who has moderate preeclampsia and gestational diabetes, it is not to say that these things risk you out of a home birth in itself, especially when you have a well-trained midwife, but it's about your comfort level and you making these decisions for yourself. So how are we getting that information to make sure that you are informed and comfortable, and you are able to then guide the show along with us, so it is a positive experience? Because I tell people the same at home. It doesn't mean that it's going to be trauma free. I can't guarantee what that looks like, because I know what labor looks like, and I've seen a lot of intense things. Labor is intense. It is dynamic. So I can't tell you what that is. You get to tell me what that is. You and your partner get to learn, and we get to work together and talk about what that is and learn your boundaries, because my job is to make you feel safe too, so that we can do this together. Because if you don't feel safe, I ultimately don't get that information too on the front end that helps set us up for safety on the long back end of your birth. All that prenatal care is what we do that sets us up for a successful home birth. And that includes screening you so that we know your risk status and how we can consult. Because I will have people who are maybe moderate, and then I say, look, if these are the things that come up during labor, we are probably that would constitute us going to the hospital. And I want this home birth for you really that, but I also want you to be informed. I hope that that is not what we have, but we're not going to talk about this when it's happening during that. That's not fair to anyone. I think people deserve to have some expectations set ahead of time.
Yeah. And I think that what I'm really excited to talk to you about today is this whole ecosystem of maternity care. I think that I would love to see the whole healthcare industry overturn and be more community based care. That is, there's a continuum of care or continuity of care where everyone consults with each other and the patient is at the
Yeah.
center of the work. And I think we're getting there with this home birth, maternity, prenatal care movement. But I would like to talk a little bit more about your vision for a maternity ecosystem.
I love that. So my vision right now, we can't have birth well, we do actually, I think, have some regs for birth centers in Maryland that are standing, but they're not great. As a CPM, I can't have a birth center. And so, which is sad, but I hope that changes eventually. I have some friends and some CNMs that are interested in changing that. But for me, I have a maternity center that can help change the maternity ecosystem by offering low cost and free resources for parents, and even now doing more online things so that we can first educate. My hypnobirthing instructor years ago said that she would plant love seeds because some people aren't open and ready to like receive that level of awareness. I do not take doula births anymore, or I love you like a lot if I'm going to step into a hospital and attend your birth, because it feels like I'm really complicit in people's care just because we do things so drastically different. We talk to people very different. It is just a different ecosystem in the community centered experience, right? So for me, being able to plant those seeds by having free support groups, free classes in a space that doesn't have those things is really where it starts. I'm the Anne Arundel County chapter lead for Postpartum Support International in Maryland. And so I host our annual Climb fundraiser, and we raise money for postpartum support and mental health awareness. So I do a lot of advocacy, and I think education really go hand in hand when it comes to creating an ecosystem. Eventually, I would like to hire more doulas to work under me and train them for home birth, and then also train some other midwives. But right now, I think in this space, it is planting love seeds and letting people know that this is available, that they have options, that their bodies are not broken, that they are safe, that their babies are safe. Also rejecting the idea of like, I'm really about like how we have so much consumer culture in postpartum that is like for convenience of your baby, right? Like knowing that this is hard and we can do both things. We can also be a mom and experience it and be hard and it be the most enjoyable thing, but it was meant to be this way. Your baby is the most important piece of this work that we do here on this planet. So your job and everything else is secondary, right? And these other things that they try to sell you can often take away from your internal knowing and that intrinsic experience that you've already created during pregnancy with your baby. So how do we reestablish and recommit that? And so for me, again, the maternity ecosystem, it's really creating that awareness in that space. So the Birds and the Bees maternity was opened with the intention to have a place where people can come and get educated and create awareness and conversation and know that this is something that's here to them.
So what does it look like in practice? The building of this community-based care model, what do you see it looking like?
Sure. I am a home birth midwife, so my clients work with me for prenatal, birth, and postpartum care, but there are free resources that people can come in for preconception, and they can also then come for childbirth classes. So usually people will start around like 20-ish weeks or 18 weeks, and they'll come in and start taking some movement classes. They will start taking educational courses. I offer Empowered Beginnings is the childbirth class that I teach here. I have a pelvic floor therapist that also joins that class and talks about the biomechanics of birth. We go over laboring positions. We have a newborn care class. We also have a breastfeeding class. So usually closer to third trimester, parents are signing up for that. And I encourage them to bring their partners or even anyone that's going to be with them in postpartum. So I've had moms come or grandma come with the mother so that they can take that newborn care class together and get that experience, which I think a lot of what I hear is like, oh my gosh, it was not like that, when I was a mom, or these things weren't available, or I wish that they were. And so it's a privilege to be able to even educate and help. And also some of the things that they knew, right? From depending on how old your parents are, there's things that they used to do that inner knowing still exists that like our society has kind of rejected, but our moms, and we're like, you're crazy. But it's like, no, actually, this does work. This is why we do it. Like skin to skin or, baby wearing. That's something that I feel like is really goes beyond generations. But cloth diapering is actually something that I've heard a lot of like grandmas do, and they pass that on. And so it's interesting to see how that bond comes together in the classes. So I offer those. And then I have postpartum support groups and breastfeeding classes for lactation for immediate care. So if people need lactation support, they can come and get that. And obviously mental health resources and referrals as well. I'm also one of the presidents of a women's networking group here in Annapolis, Maryland called The Village. And it's full of perinatal professionals that support families, mainly women, but families on the whole, whether it be physical therapists, chiropractors, therapists, realtors, any of that. So I also have a referral group that I can plug my clients into really well. And I bring them in through the support groups so they can educate and then make that connection and introduction. So again, there's that continuity of care. I also share my office with a nurse practitioner. So for my home birth families, she usually sees them as well. So in the state of Maryland, unfortunately, baby's out of my care after 24 hours and mom stays in my care for 6 to 8 weeks. So she will see them. And then that allows for further continuity. So her and I have a relationship and we get to talk about and share and cross communicate to really support that family to make sure that breastfeeding is going well, weight gain, sleeping, all of these things. As a care provider, especially, people want to show up and let me know that everything's going well. And when we're not doing home visits, I think we miss a great deal of what that looks like. And I do have an office which is great. I offer home visits for the immediate week or two postpartum, but still I'm a care provider. So people want me to know that they're doing the things, and that's great. But I think as doulas or like lactation consultants, they're really good at sometimes going in and picking up on some of the underlying details that we can really identify and then help support not just mom, but also maybe dad. And just small suggestions that we can make because, you're so tired. You got sometimes other kids that you're attending to or other family dynamics that are in play, and you're not thinking about it even when you know. So it's just that small suggestion, guiding with love, planting love seeds for people to pick up on that then open their awareness or make them feel safe enough, right, that they can show up in a place to contribute.
Yeah, I love that. What do you hope that creating this ecosystem changes about maternity care in general?
So like continuity of care is what saves lives. We know that. That's really pretty paramount in all the evidence and outcomes. And like midwives collectively eye roll all the time at ACOG when they put out all the things that they've been doing about, which is great. I want the hospital to like do more things, but we're like, yeah. This is the midwifery model of care. So just like bring us into the fold, please. Why don't you? Especially for community midwives. We've been doing this for a long time and there's a lot of evidence that it works, right? So we're seeing that it's happening. So I think recognition is important. I would really like to not have to deal with like state level legislation. This is kind of a hot take coming from a place that was unregulated to a place that is now regulated. I think sometimes regulations don't serve us. They are not always helpful for the consumer or for the provider. So I can't say that regulations are there to keep us safe. I think that sometimes it's a money grab and it benefits the state more than anything, and it benefits the obstetrics. Like right now, it's hard for us to get birth centers because the things that they are trying to say that we need are things that you just like we would be transferring to a hospital long before I need use of the things that you're trying to say that I need to have in a freestanding birth center. So they just don't understand. There's a lack of understanding from the providers, but these regulations, right? It makes us feel safe. So they want it there, but access, there's a big gap, right? We have a big gap when it comes to that. So how do we meet people where we're at? I think bringing midwives into the fold, from the outside of the fold, like at the table, we need to be stakeholders. We need to be brought in collectively and recognized as competent care providers. That's number one. We have NARM. NARM is a national organization. It's went through some structural changes this year. So I don't really know like what that is going to look like going forward. But I think having like national things that are regular, I don't even know. A regulation also feels like wrong. I hate using that word, but something that whatever they need to legitimize us more that makes them feel like we're legitimate, whatever that is, whatever pathway, we need something that, OBGYNs, and not even all of them, but whoever is sitting at ACOG and making these decisions or on the insurance boards, right? Because truly at the end of the day, it's not even just the care providers, it's the insurance companies that dictate the regulations and the laws and how the standard of care is practiced. How do we get them to be competent and understand what community low risk birth does and what that looks like so that we can be brought in and be brought in as stakeholders on the table? Because we need things to change. We need community midwives on the front line for low risk families. Not all low risk families want to have unmedicated births at home, and that's fine. So do we put more birth centers there? I don't know. They're putting a lot of things off, right? We're seeing maternity deserts where we're even closing labor and delivery wards in hospitals because they're not profitable. So what does that look like? I think asking those questions. This year was not my year to sit on policy boards, but I do hope to do that more. That I think showing up and doing the work as a midwife is number one. I don't like to talk the talk without walking the walk. So that's number one. When I put my money where my mouth is, I show up and do the work and empower families and support the family unit every day in what we're doing here and empowering by choice and taking like personal freedom and responsibilities into your own hands. But I do hope to actually be able to show up in a way in legislation so that people can start to understand more of what this looks like, because it's a lack of understanding. It's a lack of awareness. Do we need to show more educational videos like the business of being born, the big push, like all of these things? What is that? Advocacy. We do have more groups that are around now to do it. And social media helps sharing birth stories, right? I think that's a big thing for it too. So just talking about it, building awareness, your podcast, this is huge. Like Dr. Nathan, Dr. Stu, I follow them. I've been following them for years and I share them with all my moms. And I love them because they are two OBGYNs that tell you their stories and how like the medical model burnt them out. And now they help many midwives and even OBGYNs. I virtually attended the Born Free conference last year with Dr. Nathan, and there were a lot of obstetricians and nurses even that attended. It wasn't just community midwives, so it's out there. And it's the newer generation. Since COVID, I've noticed that even nurses in the hospital, I had a great anesthesiologist one time and he was like, we call me Dr. Dula. I'm like, all right, shout out to you, because usually that is not the experience. I love that you're like giving her breathing techniques. If this is what mom wants, that's fine. I'm all about, you can have whatever you want. It doesn't have to be home birth, but are the people respecting you and giving you informed consent, autonomous care, and a positive birth experience that's going to contribute to this positive outcome and positive bonding and positive, parental family bonding rates going forward, right? And outcomes. So again, I think in general, we're seeing people who are more aware and want to make a change. We're seeing the people who have been causing harm in the obstetrical system and just in the medical model, right? We're seeing them step out of that ecosystem. They're aging out, they're burning out. So I have hope for the generation. But I think starting to talk about it is really the biggest way. And then we have to step up and just collectively write really good regulations for each state.
Yeah. And I think what you said about like whatever way giving birth makes you feel comfortable, let's make sure that you feel informed, that your provider is caring for you in a way that makes you feel safe and heard. And we need to
Yep.
start, and I think the way that we start having this conversation is by sharing experiences of both, this was my experience and it went terribly wrong, or this was my experience and it was incredible. Showing both sides of the
Yes.
spectrum. But I think continuing to share, and one of the reasons I continue to podcast is to share stories and to share experiences. And I think that really helps people humanize what is going on in the care space. So I'd love to see the work that you're doing. Obviously, boots on the ground, working with parents every day, but then also making some noise for advocacy and policy and what it looks like to kind of change the landscape moving forward.
Yeah, once my kids are older, my second is 17 months. And so I feel like I'm always ready to take it on. And then I'm like, oh, no. But I'm a midwife and also still a mom.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
So
think
that season will come for me.
yeah, I was going to say, I think that's such an intersection of both being a business owner and being a mom, but then also being a midwife and having this this self-imposed responsibility of caring for these families in a really holistic, well-rounded way. I think that things come in waves and seasons, and I think that by the time you're ready to get back into the ring of advocacy and policy, I think you'll have had so many more families and so many more stories to share.
Yeah, thank you. I know that that will be the case too. We're just
Yeah.
putting it out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this. This has been amazing. I have loved hearing kind of your vision for the ecosystem of maternity care. Can you tell my listeners where they can find you and support your work?
Absolutely. So I'm on Instagram. My handle is Expecting with Emily. My website is www.expectingwithemily.com. And if you are pregnant, I also do something called the birth plan audit. And I don't take doula clients anymore, but I will sit with you and look over your birth plan and talk to you a little bit about any gaps and questions to ask your care provider, really ways to just prepare you and make sure that you feel comfortable if you aren't able to afford a doula or you really want a midwife's eyes on your birth plan. And so that is in my link in bio on my Instagram. That is my new offering. Aside from my in-person classes.
I love that. That is so amazing to be able to kind of, for the people who have to give birth in a hospital or prefer a hospital birth, to get that midwife mindset and eyes on it.
Yeah, I'm really thankful. I have a new business coach and him and I went over, like, I just had a bottleneck in my business. I was losing that. And so for me to take doula clients, it's hard as a primary midwife. And I'm passionate about it. I think there's a different level of advocacy that goes into doula support if people aren't ready for a home birth. And I think for first-time parents especially, that's really hard. Like, I don't ever want someone to go in and have a bad experience to then justify having a home birth. So how do we set you up? And doulas aren't clinically trained. And not that I'm giving care or like giving them medical advice, but I'm able to give them a little bit more clinical and didactic experience to talk about what that looks like or why their care provider is going to make that decision. So I came up with this as a really great go-between, and it's only $197. So most doulas are like $2,000. And mine, as a monitress, I'm 25, and that's just to start. So I think that it's a great deal for people who are looking to get support but aren't ready for home birth.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was incredible. I've loved chatting with you.
I know. I'm so excited, and I can't wait to listen to more podcasts of yours, Jessica, and follow you along on social media.
If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to follow the podcast wherever you listen and share it with another mom building something meaningful. If you want deeper behind-the-scenes reflections that I don't share anywhere else, join my email list at themamamakingpodcast.com. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.